You're listening to theoutdoorstation.co.uk.
This podcast is sponsored by backpackinglight.co.uk.
First of all,
minimum noise.
Maximum fun.
Backpackinglight.co.uk.
The UK's first outdoor podcasting show.
Hey, I haven't heard that jingle for a long time, so I just thought I'd pull open the drawer and dust off the edges and give it another blast. Oh, the old ones are the best ones. Well, yes, this podcast is sponsored by Backpacking Light, and as many people will know, Backpacking Light has numerous customers dotted around all over the world buying all sorts of lightweight goodies for their endeavours. Now, one particular customer, Roy Richards, happens to be over in United Arab Emirates. And as we all know, that is a rather warm and luxurious countryside. Country full stop. And the average temperature is, 30 to 40 degrees. And no doubt most people spend their time soaking up the sun or dipping in the sea. Well, Roy has recently been buying lots of lightweight insulated equipment, such as down jackets and so on, as well as bivvy bags and so on and so forth. And one has to conclude that somebody somewhere must be going out to spend some nights in the desert. So I thought the least I could do is give him a call and find out exactly what he was going to be up to with all this lovely gear. So, this conversation with Roy was recorded a few days ago. I must apologise slightly for the technical quality. It starts off well, but the quality of the phone line deteriorated after a period of time. However, you can still make out the content, which is the main thing. So I started off by asking Roy what it was all about and what sort of trips he'd been on.
Okay, right. Well, I live in the UAE, and I live in Abu Dhabi in particular, which is about, most people probably know Dubai. And Dubai is about 100 miles north of here. And I live by the sea. I live on an island, actually. Abu Dhabi itself is an island, the city of Abu Dhabi. And it's just connected to the mainland by a couple of bridges. And it's just a very big sort of hustle-bustle city. But I like, and Liz, both of us like to be out in the hills and out in the countryside. So whenever we can, we sort of get away from the city. Between us and any mountains, there's lots and lots of sand. So, we have to travel probably at least 100 miles before we get to any hills, which is where the best sort of walking is.
So literally outside the city, you're talking, a desert type, environment?
Yeah, just outside Abu Dhabi, it's very flat and boring, and the further you get away from the sea, you get some really beautiful dunes, long rolling dunes, beautiful colours, especially when with the lower light, sort of sundown and sun up, you get some really fantastic shapes, and the dunes get bigger and bigger as you go away from the city. And then eventually we've got a whole sort of range of mountains running right down the spine of this sort of peninsula, it's the Arabian Peninsula, right down the bottom of the Gulf. And those mountains go up to about 3,000 metres.
So where you are, you're obviously at sea level. I presume the weather is generally, obviously, fairly good to you on a continual basis there.
Well, yeah, you might think that. I just looked at the temperature gauge. It's 28 outside at the moment, and we're talking about 8:45 in the evening. So it's quite warm outside. It's a little bit chilly in here because we've got the air conditioning turned up too high. But it's this time of year is absolutely perfect. It's really, really nice outside. We have much cooler days. But in the summer months, from maybe sort of May, June, all the way through to the beginning of October, end of September, it's quite oppressive, the heat. But living near the sea, we get a lot of humidity as well. So it's not only hot, it's sweaty as well.
Now, I know you work in the medical profession there. Is it the expat lifestyle, is it as good as it's sort of portrayed to be over here?
I'm not too sure what you... we have a good time. We've got good friends, and we have plenty of time to ourselves, I guess. And we have a spare bit of cash to do good things. And living in this area is very central. We can travel very well from here. We can get flights. It's a bit of a hub, Dubai and Abu Dhabi, a sort of airline hub. So we can get to Africa and we can get to Nepal and the Far East very easily. So it's a great place to live if you like travelling.
The mountain range that we're going to be talking about, that you climbed with some friends, is that a car journey, a train journey, or a plane journey away from where you are?
Okay, you can get it two ways really. I mean, there's only two ways. There's by a bus. Some people, haven't got cars, take a bus. It's a long bus journey, and but most people will drive there. You can't even fly there. You could fly to Muscat, and then it would be about a 100-mile journey from Muscat. So really, it's a long car journey. It's about 300 miles from Abu Dhabi.
So you definitely need air conditioning in the car then.
You certainly do. Yeah. Although, as I say, this time of year it's cooling down a bit, and sometimes we could open the windows and let the breeze in. But up until about 3 or 4 weeks ago, you certainly want the air conditioning as soon as you get in the car. You can't even touch the steering wheel.
Gosh. Well, we'll set the scene for the listeners then, if you would. You've emailed me and told me about a group of friends that have got together to go and climb this particular range. So describe it in your own words, how this all came about, and obviously how the walk actually started. Okay,
Bob. I belong to a group called the Emirates Natural History Group, and it's just a loose-knit group of people. It's about 100 members, I guess. And everyone's interested in various aspects of natural history. Some people are birds, plants, wildlife, and the archaeology as well. There's quite a few people that are interested in archaeology. So we have one guy who's a herpetologist, and he did a study of lizards and geckos when he was living in Muscat in Oman. And part of his study area was on Jebel Shams. Okay, so this mountain, sort of highest peak in the area. And while he was up there, he discovered these juniper forests up there, beautiful, great big juniper forests that are largely untouched. There's nobody living up to the top there. And he decided he's a scientist, so he set up a study, and they were studying these things, and they were climbing the mountain and studying the growth of these trees and learning what they could about them. It got, a bit of a problem to try and go up there every day, and, the time you get up there and do a bit of studying, you've got to come down again. So he managed to get I think it was the Royal Flight from the Sultan to fly up some water and some supplies up there by helicopter. So they stashed some supplies under these trees up there, so water and food and stuff. And so he was able to stay up there with one of his colleagues, I think, for several days at a time, and really get lots of studying done. So he hadn't been up there for 10 years. This was quite a while ago. He did the study, and he decided to, take a group of people up there and have a look around, and hopefully his water was still going to be up there. But we didn't. We couldn't actually bank on that. I mean, because one of the biggest problems is in this sort of country, you have to take so much water. Mm. In your backpack. I think I took 6 litres. Now, I don't really use a lot of water, but some people will say, we're taking sort of 8 or 9 litres. Wow. So 9 kilos straight away before you put it in. And it's a fairly long hike, so you need to, stay overnight up there.
Okay, well, let's just start that then. The height of Jebel Shams is, did you say about the 3,000-metre height?
Yeah, it's just, I think on various maps it differs, but it's around about 3,000. I think some got it 2,990, but it's more or less 3,000 metres.
And you're starting from what, sort of sea level in ambient temperature?
No, you can drive up now. In the old days when you used to go up there, it used to be four-wheel drive only, but these days there's a good tarmac road most of the way up to about 2,000 metres. So in fact, the climb goes from about 1,900 up to the 3,000. So you're just climbing 1,100 meters.
And the temperature, just to give us an idea, and the time of day that you actually sort of started out.
Yeah, when we started out, it was probably in the low 20s. I didn't actually check it, but it was very pleasant. It was a sort of wonderful day to go hiking. It certainly wasn't sort of, bathed in sweat at all. It was just like a nice breeze as well, which made it very, very pleasant. So it certainly wasn't too hot when we started off, but it obviously got cooler as we got, gained altitude.
And I presume, as you say, you're looking at sort of at least 6 litres that you're carrying, and we're told that is the sort of environment that it gets very, very cold at night. So I presume you're taking the appropriate insulation and so on. So what sort of gear were you taking with you?
Well, that was the other problem. We knew I've been up there before, and I remember when I went up last time in 2003. It got very cold at night, surprisingly so. And it has actually been known to snow up there. I think it snowed up there last year. And so we were sort of very prepared for that. And in fact, the temperature went down to 4 degrees. And when you're used to 28, 30 at the bottom, and you get up to 4 degrees, it's a bit of a shock. So, yes, we had to take good sleeping bags. Some people tried to take tents, but it was a bit of a waste of time, really. There wasn't many places that you could actually pitch a tent up there. So they variously sort of stashed those under rocks after about half an hour dragging the things along. So
it's a very, very rocky environment then?
Yeah, you've got these, it's quite rough. Big trees, these trees are, 15, 20 foot tall, and maybe, the trunks are about up to a metre, I suppose, in diameter. And there's a few bushes around, but it's really just bare rock, the rest of the area. So, and it's also it's got like a dip slope to the rock, so it's very difficult to find flat areas. And where we did actually camp was just under the trees, where the branches had fallen down, and all the needles off the juniper made some sort of soft bed places,
And as regards sort of rolling out your sleeping system and bedding down, do you have to be careful of things like scorpions and snakes as well?
Yeah, we didn't see anything like that, but we certainly, are aware of things. There were no scorpions up there. I guess there may have been snakes, but we certainly didn't see any. And because we were with this expert, Drew, the guy called Drew, I'm sure he would have warned us. But no, there are wolves in the area.
Gosh.
And we came across quite a few wolf traps. Now, I don't think there are many wolves left. The local people, obviously the wolves will come down and maybe take goats, their livestock. So they make these traps, which are just like a rock tunnel with like a little sort of portcullis that drops down when the wolf goes inside and trips something. So they'll put maybe a carcass inside. The wolf will go inside, and then this rock comes down and blocks it in.
And what do they do when they catch the wolves? Because I've seen pictures of these on the website you pointed to.
Yeah. I really don't know, because I've never even seen that, and I think a lot of these things originate from way back, so they probably don't actively trap them anymore. And most of the wolf traps are in pretty poor state of repair. We found one working one there, but certainly no sign of anyone having used one, I don't think, recently.
So take us through then, it's the day's walk. The walking conditions were obviously fine when you started off. You're all sort of heavily laden with water and certain equipment that perhaps certain characters have decided they didn't need as the walk progressed.
Yeah.
Obviously, presumably it got warmer as you progressed up. How long did it take you to get to the summit, or were you stopping all the time for the different experts to explain certain features as they went by?
Yeah, there's certainly a bit of that. It's very spectacular scenery, so you're forever sort of looking around. You're walking along the side of a very deep canyon, which probably goes down about 1,000 metres to the bottom, and it's quite sheer in places. So very spectacular scenery, lots to see, and there were some bushes that sort of grow that have little berries on, called boot. And I'd seen them before, but I didn't really realise that you could actually eat them. So people were stopping and picking these berries, and they're quite edible for humans, no problem at all. And they're very sweet, little sort of berry things. And so we all set off. There were about 20, 25 people, so quite a big group. And some people planned to just go as far as they could, just for like a day trip, and then go back to the base camp. Some people planned on going maybe halfway and then camping overnight. And then the rest of us really wanted to go to the top. Now, that all made the whole thing sort of quite lengthy, really. It took us 9 hours to get to the campsite. And that was really because we were, forever stopping, waiting for people, trying to work out who was carrying on and who wasn't.
Right, okay. And so when you say the campsite, do you mean you actually pitched on the top itself?
We did, yes. Probably maybe 100 yards from the very summit, which is very exposed. So we found the small clump of trees that Drew knew about, where it sort of stashed the water. And it was a sheltered spot. So, so we camped right at the top.
Well, you've camped in various places around the world, obviously. I mean, could you describe what it must be like for somebody who's sitting in sunny, green England at the moment, wet green England, what it must be like to camp on top of a mountain in the desert?
Yeah. Well, the biggest thing is, I suppose, the lack of green. That's why the trees are so important to us, because we don't see that many of such big trees like that, apart from obviously in the city. But so out in the wild, to see some really, majestic, great big trees is quite wonderful. These things are about 1,000 years old, so you can imagine they're quite fantastic. And it's quite stark. We were on like an escarpment, really. So the side that we climbed up was shallow slope, even though it was quite steep, I guess. And when we got to the top, there's just a sheer drop down the other side into a valley. And fantastic views, really nice blue sky. When I went up there a few years back, it was very cloudy and it actually rained a little bit on us. But this time it was a very, very beautiful day. And you have to be a bit careful because not only are we high altitude, and very thin air, we're also in the tropics, and the sun's very powerful, so you get burned very easily. So one big thing was that everyone had dollops and dollops and dollops of sun cream.
Yeah, I suppose it's all the extra things like that to make the trip safer, because presumably you're not going to have a rescue team on hand or able to get hold of anybody should anything untoward happen.
Yeah, we always have to think of that, Bob. It's a very good point. We have satellite phones. We had 2 on the trip, and there was no GSM coverage up there. I think some people got a sort of patchy coverage at the very start of the walk. But yes, we have to be very careful, and it is quite dangerous in places. In that there was no real climbing involved, but it's very easy to slip over on a rock, and the rocks are quite sharp, so you could cut yourself and twist an ankle. So yes, we have to be a bit careful.
It's these juniper trees that fascinate me. I mean, the word instantly reminds me of Monty Python because they're being repeated over and over again, and Life of Brian, juniper berries and so on. But I've never actually.
Through my head, actually. Yes.
And I just 100. I would say 1,000 years old. These trees, 100 years old.
Right. Yeah, that's right. They took some slices through some of the trees. They tried to measure them. They tried to measure the growth rate. They had like a sort of tape that went round the trunk into a sort of meter thing, which had a gauge on it. And every time they went up, they would take the readings from these gauges and then put them in logbooks. But they found that sometimes the trees were getting fatter and sometimes they were getting thinner. So that wasn't very good for trying to measure the growth rate. And it turned out that the trees actually seemed to store water in their bark. So it was the bark expanding and contracting that was making the differences in measurement.
But they're very, very tough trees, though, to live in those conditions, I would think.
Well, that is what is fascinating about the whole thing, really. They're in such a really stark area, and also very windy, the temperatures change so greatly between day and night and summer and winter. So they really do have a very hard time.
So...
But,
So, on a trip like this, obviously you go out on a sort of a regular basis, or as many times as you can with your friends. But what did you actually sort of learn on this particular trip? Is there anything specific apart from the flora and fauna about techniques or gear or safety? Anything that's really struck home with you?
I think it's a general learning experience for everyone. I mean, I learned about these berries, and I've been up there before, and I've travelled a lot in the UAE. In the mountains in Arabia, and I never realised you could eat these berries. So yeah, I learned a bit. I think a lot of people have never seen wolf tracks before, and so that's quite interesting. We met some local people who've been up there gathering the berries, and they actually sold us some before we realised we could pick our own. But yeah, a lot of interest. On the lower slopes, some small remnants of, human habitation, but the further we went up, there wasn't really much at all. There is, I have to point out, there's a radar station, some sort of military radio station up on, there are two summits on the ridge, the South Summit and North Summit. And North Summit has this radio installation.
So there was sort of human activity around that installation, presumably?
Yeah, we didn't really go close to it. I mean, I don't think they would like you sort of getting too close. It was fenced off. We could see it in the distance, but we didn't bother going up there. We just went to the South Summit, which is actually the highest of the two.
So what do the locals do for a living in a place like this?
Right, well, quite interestingly, up there, they've really made use of tourism because lots of people drive up there just to the highest point you can drive and look down into this the canyon that I mentioned. And so the local people, they keep goats and they weave little carpets and make shoes and key ring things. So they make a whole range of things that they try to sell to you. And I was quite amused, actually, because I was doing some searching on the internet the other day, and there's a picture of Prince Charles up there being sold one of these carpets.
So what do you guys do then? So you went up there for an overnight and came back down to the base camp, or where you park the vehicles and so on. Do you sort of go somewhere to celebrate something like this, or do you sort of turn around and start to drive back?
Well, we spent another night. We were lucky that we had the public holiday here, so we had an extra night before we had to drive back. I think a couple of people had to get back to work, but certainly I didn't feel in any fit state when I got back to the car to move very far at all. But yes, it was a tough walk, but very, very interesting. And nowadays, in the last few years, the tourism ministry in Oman have put up marked trails. We didn't actually follow the marked trail, but there is a marked trail up there with painted rocks and a little sort of map of the routes of the car park. So I started marking these hikes out. So if people do visit the area, there are books and various map sets you can get that point out where to go.
Yeah, I was going to say that. I mean, you don't tend to think of United Emirates as being a walking destination, but it sounds like they've cottoned onto the fact that actually that's probably the new environmental tourism business that's growing.
Well, that's actually Oman, which is just across the border from us. But there was a little bit of hiking tourism in the UAE as well. We have our own little bit of mountain, not quite as good as the Omani ones, but certainly people do come here just to hike. And I run a little website, and I get a lot of people inquiring about climbing and hiking. There's a fair bit of climbing here as well. There's a small community of people that do rock climbing as well.
Well, I presume they've stitched up the diving and scuba diving, so on. That must be going on shore.
Yes, there's lots of dive centres and sailing, water sports, big thing really. You've probably seen the glossy brochures of Dubai and stuff. Yeah.
So where next for your group then? Obviously that was a successful trip and one that was interesting and stimulating. What's next on the list, do you think?
Well, I usually, at least once a year, I mean, I do, Liz and I and a few friends, we go out, the cool season from now on until probably next May, we make the most of the cooler months and we go out as much as we can, either to the desert or we go up into the hills and look for new hills to climb. And, but I'm going to run another trip for the Natural History Group in January, January or February, I'm not sure yet. And I usually take a group of people up one of the mountains, because a lot of people just don't know where to go. They like to hike, but they're not too sure how to do it, really, and where it's safe to do it.
Yeah, I mean, what about the actual desert hiking as well? Is that a popular sort of pastime to sort of discover the area and go and get yourself lost and retrace your steps? Do many people do that?
Well, we're actually off tomorrow to a place that we call Two Trees, which is a place in the desert with two trees, funnily enough. But it's an area that we know quite well, and we'll park the cars and go for a little sort of walk around and see what's happening in the dunes. Because there's plenty of life there, even though it looks pretty barren and pretty sterile. Once you start poking around, there's lots of little animals and plant growth and stuff. So it's quite nice. The desert, we do have people that sort of run marathons across the desert and that sort of stuff, but it's really hard work going up and down dunes. I'm sure you've done that at the seaside, and some of the dunes here are up to like 1,000 feet, so you can imagine.
Yeah, I presume you're relying 100% on GPS systems to navigate in those conditions.
Bob, that's made such a difference for us, because the maps, even now, are very, very poor. And a combination of Google Earth and the GPS systems have really made a big difference. When we first got a GPS, it was so wonderful to find out where we'd been. Because we used to get lost in the mountains and could never find our way back to a particular spot that we'd found that we liked. Because, without GPS, it was just impossible.
Did you ever had any really dangerous, troubling times from a navigation point of view?
Not at all, really. Not that I can. We did do a long trek. It was like a 3-day trip. This was driving across the desert, and it was before the days of GPS actually. So we were just using compass, and we were down near the Saudi border. And it was a bit of a worry that we may accidentally cross that and get in trouble. So we thought we were lost at one stage, but we just pressed on, and eventually we saw a road and managed to get to it. But that was sort of 2 days in the wilderness, and just driving across the dunes. So that was quite an exciting thing to do. But no, I never really had too much worry. GPS works really well here. And I think for a long time we had the high-quality GPS, which you didn't have in Europe for a long time. I don't know if you remember, but the GPS,
the military one, yeah.
Yeah, but we had the military one here because once I think when the Americans were here, they had to switch it on because they were using commercial units and everything. So we had some good leads. But in those days we were using it mainly for diving and finding wrecks and stuff.
Excellent. Well, Roy, it sounds a fascinating lifestyle and certainly very interesting to talk to you about what it must be like to live in that area and take trips out and hiking. It's certainly a different type of hiking experience to anything I've experienced, and it sounds fascinating. So I do wish you well, and I do wish you lots of safe trips and lots of good return trips as well, and plenty more stories.
Thanks very much, Bob. Yeah, I don't know if you wanted me to say anything about the gear that I took and weight. Are you interested in that?
Yeah, definitely. Well, there's always a gear question. There's always somebody listening who wants to know about gear. So what have you got? What do you carry?
Right, okay. I've got a few notes here. I had 14 kilos, I think, when we started off, and that was including the food and water. So, okay, I had 6 kilos of water. And I didn't really take much food. I had some dates, which we always take along here, really good source of food here, as you're hiking, and some noodles, and a few energy bars. I had quite a heavy sleeping bag. I wish I'd had a lighter one. I mean, I've got a heavy rad one, which I take to the pool, and I think I weighed about 1,700 grams. I think I could have lightened up a bit there. And then I had a Vivi bag, the Rad Survival Zone. And I usually use merino wool here. I've got some icebreaker stuff. And I bought from you, actually, a Montane Kinetic. That was really useful. Kept me nice and warm at the top and kept the wind off, because it got quite windy when the temperature dropped. And apart from that, what else do we have? I took a peak ignition stove up there to boil up the water, make some tea and coffee, and rehydrate my pot noodles. And I had my Go Light Cumulus jacket, which my down jacket, it's just wonderful, because it just gives instant warmth when you need it. So once we finished the climb, we were all a bit damp. I just stripped off, changed into dry clothes, and put that on, and I was nice and cozy. And
were you well equipped? Were you better equipped than the others with you?
I think so, Bob. I mean, because I do a lot of this, 2 or 3 of us had proper, what I would say, the proper gear for the hike, and then other people just improvised. Really, they just took any old rucksack they could find and just strapped things on the side of it, and yeah.
I suppose the outdoor retail scene is pretty small there, though.
Yes, it is, really. With Dubai, you're getting a few shops. I think like Colombia has a shop up there where they sell, but it's mainly sort of fashion gear, really, fashion outdoor gear. So we really have to, if we want anything decent, we have to get it made order.
Right, all right. Well, brilliant. Well, thanks very much indeed for giving us that list. That's useful. So anybody that does come out that way and fancies doing some walk, they really do need to bring their own equipment. Yeah,
I think so. Yeah, you can't really pick up too much here, and it is quite nice to have proper gear. You need to keep the weight down, because you're having to carry a lot of water, and it is quite hard work, quite hot sometimes. So you enjoy it much more when you're light.
What about actually, when you talk about the water, picking the water up, do you have to filter it much, or is it you sort of talking about bottled water and so on?
Yeah, we just took bottled water. I took lots of 500ml, just ordinary bottled water, and I just splashed them in the rucksack. I found the small bottles were easy to pack. And as it happened, actually, I mentioned that there was some water stashed up there, and we actually found that. So we needn't have taken so much water up there. I don't know what condition it was in. Some people drank it. I certainly didn't. I didn't need to. But it seemed to be okay. There was even some food up there. Drew had a sort of a big metal chest stashed under a tree, and he had macaroni and all sorts of bits and pieces in there, which was still edible.
Well, I can see obviously a return trip for the Christmas party by the sound of it.
I think so, yes.
Excellent, Roy. Well, thanks very much indeed for your time. It's been a fascinating insight, as I say, into your lifestyle out there, and certainly an outdoor lifestyle. Not something I would have considered, but it's been really interesting. So I hope you enjoy your very, very warm and balmy night while we snuggle down and turn the heating on.
Yes, I hear it's getting cold over there.
Many thanks.
Okay, Bob. Very nice to talk to you.
Well, my thanks there to Roy there for joining us on the line and explaining that backpacking and lightweight backpacking has definitely got a following no matter where you go in the world. And of course, if you ever want some gear, you can always contact backpackinglight.co.uk. Anyway, that pretty well wraps this one up from us. So until next time, bye for now.
backpackinglight.co.uk.
Go lighter, go faster, go further.
This sponsored programme has been brought to you by theoutdoorstation.co.uk.